Hello, fantastic fourth graders. Welcome to week 8. And in week 8, we will explore the characteristics of two-dimensional and three-dimensional shapes, starting with identifying and describing, and ending the week with you creating shapes in a variety of forms. So let's get started. This lesson has 3 parts, and you'll just need paper, pencil, a listening ear, oh, and a smile. Can't forget that, okay? Part 1 is the warm-up. So here's what I would like for you to do. Take a look at the shapes pictured here on the right, okay? What do you see? And how do you see them? All right, so on your paper, sort the shapes into no more than 3 groups using a characteristic of your own choice. Once more, on your paper, sort the shapes into no more than 3 groups using a characteristic of your choice. Take a moment to think about that. Press pause if you need to, and then when you're ready, press play. Okay, you're going to use the shapes right here on the right to sort them into no more than 3 groups. That's group 1, group 2, group 3. Okay, and then you're going to name them, okay, using a characteristic of your choice. Now that you've sorted and classified the shapes, it's time to share your work. And here's how. With a tablet or a cell phone, scan the QR code below or type in the web address on your computer. Here's the QR code and here's the web address, okay? So when you're ready, you can share your work. You can record your video. Just hold your work up to the camera and speak nice and clear, okay? With a tablet or cell phone, scan the QR code below or type in the web address on your computer. Okay? And here's the web address. In part 2 of this lesson, we are going to explore the characteristics of solid shapes. Your I can statement for today is, I can identify, describe, compare, and contrast plane and solid figures according to their attributes, number of angles, vertices, edges, and the number and shape of faces using pictorial representations. That seems like a lot. So before we begin, let's unpack it a bit. Let's start with identify. What does identify mean? It means to name it. What is it? How about describe? Describe means to tell about it. And so now, how about compare and contrast? Where have we heard those words before? Yep, you guessed it, probably during your reading or language arts time. So what do those words mean? Compare and contrast. It means to tell how things are alike and how they're different, similarities and differences. How about attributes? What's a synonym for attributes? Characteristics or features. And here you see some of the features that we will discuss during this lesson. Number of angles, vertices, edges, and the number and shape of faces. Okay, so once again, our goal for today is to identify, describe, compare, and contrast plane and solid figures according to their attributes or characteristics or features. So let's take a look at the solid shapes. Okay, repeat after me. Ready? Sphere, cylinder, cone, cube, square pyramid, rectangular prism. Sphere, cylinder, cone, cube, square pyramid, rectangular prism. Now, the big question is, how do they compare? But before you can answer that question, you have to think back to a time when you first learned about plane figures or plane shapes? Okay. You probably said, Miss Means, I don't remember. What are plane shapes? So here's your moment. Find a friend. Find someone in your house to talk to. Ask them, do they know anything about plane shapes? What are plane shapes? What is Miss Means talking about? Take a moment, ask someone. Hmm. So now let's answer that question. How do they compare? Which plane shape do you think is most like a cube? Let's see. A square. A square. How is a square most like a cube? Look at the shapes. Hmm. All righty. Let's try this square pyramid. Which plane shape or plane figure do you think is most like the square pyramid? If you said triangle, you are correct. How are they alike? How are they different? How do they compare? I see triangle shapes. Okay, but wait, this looks like, somehow they're different. What do you think? I don't want to give away the answer. What do you think? Okay, let's move on. We'll come back to that. Let's move on. Which plane shape do you think is most like the rectangular prism? Rectangle. You're absolutely correct. Do you see the similarities and differences between the prism and the rectangle? And how about the sphere? You guessed it, a circle. A circle is much like or most like the sphere. You're absolutely correct. So here we have solid figures and here are the plane figures. So how do they compare? Well, let's take a look at the cube and the square. The square is the plane shape, okay? It's flat or two-dimensional, meaning it has length and width, okay? Just like this paper napkin here. Whereas the cube is three-dimensional. It has a length, it has width, and it has height or volume, just like this Kleenex box, okay? So those are ways they are different. The one way they are alike is that they both have square faces, but we will explore that a little later in the lesson, okay? So now that we can identify plane and solid shapes, let's take a look at some important vocabulary words that will help us further understand plane and solid shapes. Okay? We've already discussed a few of these words earlier in the lesson. Which words have we not yet discussed? If you said edge, face, angle, vertex, or vertices, you're absolutely correct. Here's what I would like for you to do. Choose two vocabulary words, any two vocabulary words that we've used throughout the lesson to complete the graphic organizer. Okay, once more, choose two vocabulary words to complete the graphic organizer. And this can be any two words that we've discussed throughout the lesson. And here are the items that should be included in your graphic organizer. My definition, that's what does the word mean to you in your own words. The formal definition, what does the dictionary say? If you do not have a dictionary, it's okay to use a Google search dictionary. That's fine. Examples, what are examples of your vocabulary word? And non-examples of the word. Deal? Okay. Don't worry if you're unable to print or to reproduce this form or this graphic organizer as you see it. Just use your pencil and your paper and do the best you can. To help you get started, here's an example. I chose the vocabulary word, plane figures. My definition, plane figures are flat shapes without having volume. The formal definition, flat two-dimensional or 2D shapes that can be made of straight lines, curved lines, or both. Here are some examples: flat, two-dimensional. Non-examples, they are 3D shapes. So this is just an example of how your graphic organizer can look. Okay, so feel free to turn this into a family project or a family activity. Parents, it may be a good idea at this time to have your child create flashcards for the remainder of the words so that they can refer to them throughout this entire lesson and use them over and over again as we continue to learn about characteristics of plane and solid shapes. Okay, let's explore the word attributes just a little more. What did we say attributes were? Yeah, they are the characteristics or the qualities or even the features of a shape. And so we're going to use this real life example of a cube to explore its characteristics. So the first characteristics are the faces. What are the faces? The faces are the flat shapes that serves as the sides of a solid figure. So here's a face and here's a face on the side. If we lift the cube up, on the bottom there's a face, on this side there's a face, and on the back there's a face, okay? So those are the faces. Next are the edges. That's here, here, along here, here, and so on. Edges are line segments where two faces intersect. So this right here is an example of an edge because here's a face and here's a face, and it's a line segment, okay, where two faces intersect. So those are the edges, or that is an edge, okay? Next, vertex or vertices, okay? Here's an example of a vertex. A vertex, also known as corners, is a point where three or more faces meet. So once again, here's a face, and it's a face here on the side. So this point or corner where three faces meet is called a vertex. And we call it a vertices because there's more than one, okay? So this will be a vertex, here's a vertex, here's a vertex, and so on. So a cube has many vertices. And finally, the angles, okay? So we've all heard of angles before, right? Yeah, so angles are formed when two edges meet at the vertex. So here we are here. Here's an angle, here's an angle, here's an angle, here's an angle, okay? So just on the front face of a cube, there are 4 angles, but we know there are more faces to a cube, okay? And so your assignment, your last assignment will be for you to try to discover or determine how many angles or how many faces these solid shapes have, okay? So, did you get all of that? I'm sure you did. For your last and final task of the day, you are going to use all of the information you learned from today's lesson to complete 2 charts, one for solids and one for plane shapes. Here are the charts. Okay? Here's the chart for the solid shapes. Don't worry if you're unable to print or copy the chart exactly as you see it. Just use your paper and your pencil to complete as much of the chart or much information of the chart as you can. Here's the chart for the solids. Here is the chart for the plane shapes, okay? So your job will be to complete as much of the information as you can. And when you are done, yep, you guessed it, you must show your work or share your work, okay? And here's how. Once again, you will use the same information to share your work. Show what you know. We've learned a lot today, okay? This lesson was broken up into 3 different parts that included identifying, it included vocabulary, and it included just kind of completing information on the characteristics of the plane and solid shapes. Okay, so that's a lot of information to take in today. So I would love to just know how much you've learned and what you know so far. So please share your work as much as you can. Don't worry if it's just on regular paper. Just be sure to hold your paper to the camera and speak nice and clear so that I can understand you. Okay? So how are you feeling? I know it was a lot, but has this lesson helped you to better sort and classify solid shapes? Remember at the start of the lesson, you were asked to sort the shapes into 3 different groups and then classify them? How are you feeling about that now? If you were asked to do that again, would you have a different way to sort them or would you keep it the same? I think you probably would try something different. I know I would. Well, what about comparing and contrasting plane and solid shapes? Do you know something now that you didn't know at the beginning of this lesson? Do you now remember things about those plane shapes? I know it may have taken some time because, yeah, we haven't worked with plane shapes in a while or even solid shapes. So, yeah, it probably had taken some time for it to just come back around. But do you know how to compare and contrast the plane and solid shapes after this lesson? Okay, well, great job. So that brings us to the end of our lesson and the end of our day. Okay, so let's recap. Your I can statement for today was, I can identify, describe, compare, and contrast plane and solid figures according to their characteristics or their attributes. Those were the number of angles, vertices, edges, and the number and shape of faces using pictorial representations. And I think we completed all of that, and you are still completing it as you work through your charts for today's lesson. Tomorrow, we will start our day by going over those charts. So join me tomorrow.